everyone. This is the first part of a two-part video entitled Taking Care of Yourself in the Winter Months. And it's brought to you by the Adams County Public Library System and is sponsored by the Lions Club. So I guess I should introduce myself first. My name is Holly Forrest. I've been in this area I was born and raised in this area. I went to college at Penn State University and graduated in 1995 with a degree in sports and exercise science, and then came back to the area. I've been working in the field of health and wellness and fitness since that time. I have my own studio. After working for other companies, I started my own studio in the late 90s. Then I had kids and was concentrating on raising them, and then I reopened my studio again in 2012. So I've been working with clients one-on-one, personal training since that time. Right now, actually, I'm doing Zoom sessions, so it's kind of cool how we have the technology to pivot during these difficult times. Recently, in March, actually, during the pandemic, I decided to renew my certification, my personal training certification, and I went through a company called the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and that's a very comprehensive certification. It goes over more than just exercise and fitness. And that's our guest back here, Talia. So she's making an appearance today. Also good for stress management. In October, I found a certification that concentrates on autoimmune diseases, particularly people that are struggling with the pain and fatigue of things like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And so that certification concentrated more on decreasing inflammation in the body and working with nutrition and exercise to decrease loss of productivity, decrease pain, decrease stress that keeps people from being able to get a restful night's sleep. So that was completed in October, and that was an autoimmune protocol certified health coach certification. So that I've been able to use a lot of that information just with my general clients, not just with people that have autoimmune disease. So I was very excited to get that information. So today I'm going to go into basically three areas. The first is going to be the stress system and how stress affects us, and kind of a little bit of the science behind it. I'm not going to go too deep in the science. We're going to concentrate mostly on the hormone cortisol. Then we're going to go into mindset, and then finally we're going to talk about resistance training and how resistance training is probably the most important exercise you can do. So that's not kind of a well-known fact, so we're going to go more into that because a lot of people want to focus on usually cardio. You see a lot of people walking or stretching. So we'll talk more about resistance training at the end. But first I want to talk, because I think it's very relevant for the time period that we're in right now. People are kind of feeling the pressure and the stress of the situation on top of their normal everyday stress. So our stress system, our fight or flight system, not to get too, again, wordy with the science, but our fight or flight system is actually fight, flight, or freeze. And that system was put in place so that many years ago, if we came across an acute situation, acute danger, like running away from a lion or a tiger or a bear, it was meant to help us survive that short-term problem, so to speak. So what happens is when you come up against a stress, let's say you step out onto the street and you have to jump out of the way of a fast-moving car, that would be an acute stressor, and that's what our fight or flight or freeze mechanism was originally designed to do, to work for us. You have a surge of adrenaline and cortisol that will help your brain evaluate quickly what you have to do, and it will get the energy of your muscles to jump out of the way of a moving car. So what happens when we come upon a stress like that is the body releases both adrenaline and cortisol. We're going to focus more on cortisol today. So what cortisol does is it tells your body basically, look, we're going to prioritize right now the brain and the muscles. So our brain and our muscles, the food source for our brain and our muscles is glucose or glycogen. Glycogen is stored in our muscles. There's some in our liver as well. So in order to use that to get our brain and our muscles to work, they need glycogen. So the cortisol is released. It says, okay, we're not worried about digestion, we're not worried about reproduction, and we're not worried about our immune system right now. We need you to put the brain and the muscles first. That is what the hormone cortisol does. So short term, it makes a lot of sense. It's going to get you out of a bad situation. It's gonna help your brain think faster. It's gonna help your muscles move faster to dodge out of the way of that car. Now, if we look at it from a long-term situation, you can start to see where this would get you in trouble. So if you have like a stressful job or a stressful relationship, or you have to drive and sit in traffic, that's actually a very big stressor for a lot of people. That's not an immediate situation that you can get out of right away. So what happens there is that you're chronically exposed to this stressor, but your body doesn't understand that it's, the 2000s and that you're not in immediate danger. So it feels that you're stressed about something, and it perceives that you need to quickly run away from a bear or a lion or a tiger. So it keeps pumping out cortisol, and what happens is it just keeps pumping it out. As long as you're feeling that stress and you're having that stress response, it's going to continue to feed you the cortisol because it thinks you need the cortisol to get out of the situation. So going back, what do we know that cortisol does? It prioritizes the brain and the muscles, which need what? Glycogen, glucose, in order to work. So what do you think happens with your body then? Your body's thinking, oh, our brains need to work, our muscles need to work to get away from this lion. They don't realize it's just maybe not so nice of a boss that you're trying to get away from. So it kicks out the cortisol, keeps kicking out the cortisol, and your body's like, oh, we need more glucose, we need more glycogen. So actually what happens, prolonged release of cortisol causes your body to crave sugar, because it gets converted to glycogen, which our brain and our muscles need, and actually high fat also, just as like a survival mechanism. Fat is very, it sticks to us, as we all know, and so it's very good in survival situations. So we've got this chronic stressful situation. We're all in the same boat right now as far as what's going on with the pandemic. So we've got this chronic stress. And then we've got more stress, our regular stress, and our cortisol's pumping out, and our body wants sugar, and our body wants fat because it thinks it needs it. So you can see where this is going. It can cause, of course, weight gain, especially weight gain around the middle, because without going too much in depth of it, because of the sugar craving, the cortisol affects the insulin glucose balance there. So you kind of get a metabolic syndrome picture going on, which involves weight gain around the middle. So it's not a good thing. And also prolonged cortisol, prolonged cortisol will eventually lead to, not right away, but eventually it will lead to an electrolyte imbalance. So then what do you start craving when you don't have enough electrolytes? Salt. So now you're craving sugar, salt, and fat. So we can see there's a perfect storm for the weight gain going on there. So, okay, so we understand the problem now. We understand how cortisol affects it. So we probably want to now figure out, how do we get over this? So the fastest way, there's a couple of ways to decrease your cortisol. Of course, it's stress management in general, but what they found is the fastest way to decrease cortisol immediately is through your positive social relationships. So that would be through people or pets that make you feel supported. Actually interacting or just sitting and petting your pet releases oxytocin, which drops cortisol levels. So that's just kind of something you can do quickly. You don't have to take a lot of time to do that. But what's going on now is I think we're using the word socially distance, and that's not a great word to use. You should use the word physically distance. So if you're kind of isolated by yourself right now, you want to connect with your positive social relationships. And I have a few clients that are finding really creative ways to do that. They're having a few of my clients for Christmas had family game nights over Zoom, or they'll play different games that can be played that way over Zoom. So Zoom is a great way to connect with those social relationships without physically being in the same presence. So make sure you focus on those positive social relationships. Now, the next thing that we can do is to try to stimulate the vagus nerve. And again, I won't go way into detail with this, but the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It innervates. A lot of you have probably heard of the connection, the brain stomach connection, and how depression can actually be from a imbalanced microbiome in your stomach. So I'm not going to go way into that. Don't worry, it's not a science lesson, but just know that 10th cranial nerve innervates. It helps with the gut digestion and heart rate and respiration. Okay, so it's got nerves. We've got a communication system basically between our brain and our stomach and our heart, which is a good thing. So a lot of times that vagus nerve, vagal nerve, whatever you want to call it, becomes weakened. And actually the science is kind of incredible, because what weakens the vagus nerve is anxiety and depression and underactive brain activity. Negative emotion also decreases that vagus nerve. So we want to strengthen that to help control the stress management, because if we can get that vagus nerve turned on, it's going to combat the system that pumps cortisol through our bodies, which we've already decided cortisol is a bad thing. It's going to make us want sugar, salt, and fat. So we want to get that cortisol down. And like I said, the fastest way is to make those connections with your positive relationships in your life. But another way would be to stimulate or strengthen the vagus nerve. So right now, probably all of our vagus nerve could use a little strengthening. And the fastest and easiest way is just to start to breathe properly. So a lot of us breathe, anxiety breathing is actually what it's termed. Anxiety breathing is from the chest. So when you're anxious, you're probably taking shallow breaths from the chest and not really getting a full oxygen into the lungs. So in order to really breathe properly and to stimulate that vagus nerve, you want to breathe deeply. You want to breathe into the belly versus into the chest. So you can just practice this by, the best way is to lie flat on the ground and practice breathing, and make sure you're breathing from down here and not up here. I believe people that are in chorus, I think my son does these exercises too, to practice breathing from the diaphragm versus up here. So that's the fastest way to strengthen that. And then if you can add some meditation during that, of course, that's going to be even better, because you'll practice it for a longer period of time. Most of us will want to meditate between 5 and 15 minutes. So that's the fastest way. Another way to stimulate the vagus nerve is actually just splashing cold water on the top part of your face. I know some people that are really into the science behind strengthening the vagus nerve will recommend taking a cold shower or taking a walk out in the cold. So the cold will strengthen the vagus nerve too. Laughing, of course, that makes sense, especially if you're belly laughing. It's coming from down here. It's going to strengthen the vagus nerve. Singing and gargling, because it also innervates the pharynx. So singing and gargling will also strengthen that vagus nerve. Gentle movement. which could be like something like Tai Chi or yoga. You don't want it to be a movement that you're going to feel stress, because if you're, for example, if you're running or sprinting, then that's going to bring up the whole sensation of running from a bear, running from a lion or a tiger. So you want to make sure that you are doing movement that helps strengthen the vagus nerve and not make you think that your body's under attack. Not to say that there's not a place for that, but we won't go into that here. Eating a diet that's high in omega-3 fatty acids. So most of the Americanized diet is very high in omega-6 and very low in omega-3. So it's really good to try to change that ratio by getting more omega-3s. So those are some ways that you can strengthen the vagus nerve. So breathing, laughing, singing, even gargling, gentle movement, splashing cold water on your face. Great way to stimulate the vagus nerve. So that's like a fast fix to decreasing cortisol in your body. So now we're going to go a little bit more into how to make it more of a long-term fix of getting the cortisol down. So let's talk a little bit about mindset. A recent study, was actually in July of 2020 at Queen's University in Canada, did a study and found that on average we have approximately 6,200 thoughts per day. Now, I know that number has been all over the place. I've heard as high as 60,000 thoughts per day, and that seems a little bit high to me, but they actually had a way of measuring it. What did they call it? The wormhole of a thought. So they actually were able to measure the beginning and end of a thought, this new technique that they use. And unfortunately, most of them are negative or repetitive. So there's like a lot of interesting science right now on neuroplasticity and how we can change the brain by how we can change our thoughts. And I'm sure some of you have heard the old adage that your thoughts become your actions become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. So I think there's no argument that your thought life is very important to reframe in a more positive way, and it not only will it more positively impact you, but it will positively impact those around you as well. So one of the first things you can do, and it's difficult in the beginning, is start to recognize your different thoughts. Now, if you're having good thoughts, that's great. Leave them alone, have more of them. But if you start to recognize that you get in your head a lot and tell yourself things that are not good, then you want to work on reframing those. So the first thing you want to do is actually recognize them when they happen, because a lot of times you're probably not conscious of them. Like for instance, if you're not really a good cook, you could be cooking something and something could go wrong, and you could be telling yourself, I'm just a terrible cook. Okay, so you want to get a hold of that thought and be like, now, is that true? Is that true? Or I'm just upset and frustrated because this one thing went wrong. So once you get a hold of that negative thought, you want to start to reframe it, and you want to say, and it's not good to lie to yourself and say, I'm a world-renowned chef if you're not a world-renowned chef. So you want to say, I'm getting better in the kitchen every day, something like that. So something that you can believe, and something that can slowly start to change the momentum, because something that has a lot of momentum, right? If a car is speeding down a hill, you can't just stop it on a dime. So you want to not then beat yourself up over the fact that you can't turn these thoughts around quickly. You want to look at these different thoughts and say, okay, how can I reframe them in a more positive manner, and how can I turn this momentum around? So right now I get a lot of people tell me, I'm just not good at exercise, or I don't have motivation. Motivation is kind of going out of the way. Willpower, those are kind of old ideas. And really the old adage of just doing something is now like action comes first and then motivation follows. So I'll say to them, maybe you're not feeling like it today, but just go and take a 5-minute walk. So go and do some kind of 5-minute movement. So that's an example of taking a negative thought and turning it around and like making it something that you can accomplish and start to believe yourself. You don't want to, like I said, make it too grand of a change, or you're probably not going to trust or believe that you can accomplish that. So you want to start with something small. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Like if you want to start to eat better, okay, I can add 2 veggies and 2 fruits a day. And then when you start to do that, then you can tell yourself, I'm eating better. And then you can add another, like now I can eat more healthy protein, or maybe try kale. So you want to start with those small steps and build and practice. Kind of got off on a side road on that, but that's kind of just an example. So first you got to be aware of the problem, be aware of the thought, and then slowly work to reframe that thought in a believable way, and then just make it better and better and better. Another way to help your mindset would be to, of course, meditate. And what I advise a lot of my clients to do is journal before they meditate. And I actually have them do something called, it's not my idea, it's somebody else's idea, I don't want to claim it. It's called future scripting. So you actually say something like, I am healthy and I've got plenty of energy, and you would actually write that down in a journal, and then you would do your meditation. A really good meditation app, by the way, that's very user friendly, and you can advance your meditation in it or keep it simple, is called Calm, Calm, Calm app. Very easy app to use. So I highly recommend meditation. I think it helps everyone. It's really helped myself, so I can kind of personally attest to that. And also positive affirmations. Again, these are things that you may not buy into for yourself at first, but it'll just take some time. So you look in the mirror and you say, something like, you are a great cook, or you are very healthy and got lots of energy. So those are like positive affirmations. And there's science also behind the power pose, the superhero pose, when you're doing your positive affirmations. And I think we've all heard that heard the thing that sometimes what you do with your body can then affect your mind. So standing up straight will make you feel more confident. Smiling will actually release chemicals of happiness. So kind of the same idea there is positive affirmations. You're adding 2 things though. If you're doing the power pose and you're saying you're confident in everything you do, that will help increase your mindset over the long term. And these things are gonna feel uncomfortable and a little corny at first, but I promise you over the long term it will help. Just kind of make yourself do it, and then you will find after about a week, you'll be like, oh, this stuff's working. Not sure how, but it is working. Also, going back a little bit to the negative thought, I should have slipped that. I've got my notes here. I should have slipped that up higher, but I just see this and I don't want to let this one go because this one's very important. A lot of times our belief system is coming from an old story. Our limiting beliefs in ourselves are usually coming from an old story that we've told ourselves, typically from childhood, but it could be just from a few years back. So an example that I see a lot for people that come to me for exercise, because I really try to have a very safe space for fitness and a very slow progression. But I hear this story a lot. Well, I wasn't good in gym class. I was really bad at gym class. So it's like they're warning me. I'm super uncoordinated. I can't do this, so good luck. So you got to go back and look at some of those stories and take a microscope to them and see, were they really as bad as you thought? You don't have to have been great in gym class in order to get a high level of fitness. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. But there are other limiting beliefs and old stories that we tell ourselves. So really make yourself stop and think about that thought. Where's that thought coming from? Is it true? or am I taking on the feelings of my old self or somebody else? Okay, so, one last thing with mindset. Again, this isn't my idea. I saw this really cool, I don't even remember now where I saw it, but this person suggested, and it's kind of along the same lines as the power pose or whatever, would be an avatar of your ideal self. So if you're trying to create a healthier life, that you'd want to, you can, if you're a talented artist, you could do one yourself. Some people take like a little figurine of something and use that as their avatar, a superhero or something, so that you picture yourself in the future after you've accomplished your goals, but you pretend as if you already have accomplished those goals. So those are little tips and tricks for your mindset to help boost your mindset, which will then help you accomplish the goals. And I really have found over the years of doing fitness training and a little bit of nutrition coaching with the fitness training that you can have all the right pieces as far as what to eat and what to how to exercise, but if you don't have that mindset where it needs to be, you can't sustain the changes long. So okay, so finally, last portion of today, we're going to talk about exercise, in particular resistance training. Just going back to the cortisol bit a little bit, cardio exercise is very important, but you don't want it to be at a level or a length of time that is going to stimulate the release of more cortisol. So for instance, if you're going on really long, intense runs, that's gonna, again, signal your body that you're being chased by a lion, and that's not what we wanna do. So resistance training, what resistance training does is it helps you lose fat loss instead of just weight loss. We don't wanna lose muscle. A pound of muscle burns 7 times more calories than a pound of fat. So if you add muscle, you're burning calories even when you're sitting and watching TV. So we definitely want to put muscle on and not focus too much on weight. So a little statistic here that's a little scary, or it was scary to me, that it was just in my NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine personal training certification class, was that a sedentary adult, and that means somebody that's not moving around a lot, will lose 5 pounds of muscle per decade and put on 15 pounds per decade. So that just shows you how important it is to maintain your muscle. Again, burn 7 times more calories than a pound of fat. If you think about it in terms of, you want to concentrate on what size you want to be. If you're really kind of looking to lose weight, try to reframe it in what size do I want to be versus what weight do I want to be. If you think about a ball that you play tennis with versus a ball that you play table pool with, they're both about the same size, but the tennis ball would be fat filled and the ball that you used for playing pool would be muscle filled. So same size, one's heavier, but same size. So just kind of keep that in mind. So right now, I know it's kind of difficult to do resistance training because the gyms are shut down. You may be able to find a trainer online. There's a lot of resources online for free, but I would say be careful with those because not all of them are safe. So make sure you work with a qualified professional. And some things that you can have at home that would help your resistance training would be dumbbells. I don't have a pair right here, but I think most of us know you can get dumbbells. You want to have some dumbbells, and if you haven't lifted before, you're kind of out of shape, you want to stick with 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds. You can also use bands. Oh, I think that my bands are over here. Dahlia was keeping my bands earlier. You can have straight bands or loop bands, and you can get those just about anywhere. Target has some, Marshall's has some, Amazon. And a nice replacement for a bench would be a physio ball. So a physio ball in about the size of a 65 centimeter or a 75 centimeter ball. So again, easy equipment you can have at home. You can do a bunch of exercise. Don't go out and spend a lot on like a Nautilus or I can't remember what some of the other ones are, but sometimes they're very complicated to use and the setup is difficult. You're better off going and getting some dumbbells and some resistance bands. So we're at 30 minutes, so I got to cut it off. I will be back. Thank you again to the Adams County Public Library System and the Lions Club for sponsoring this. You can find me on Facebook under just my regular name, Holly Forrest. That's probably the easiest way to find me. I do have a business Facebook page called Holly's Holistic Fitness. I'm not on there as much though, so you're probably better off finding me on my personal page. So thanks everyone. Take care of yourself and try to get that stress under control. Do things that make you laugh and make you have fun. Bye-bye.